you're just joining, we have a poll up and running that's asking you what your current relationship is with cider. We always love to know if you're a cider enthusiast, a cider curious, a cider skeptic, sometimes maybe even a cider hater. There are certainly those out there who have some myths that we need to help bust about cider still. And so I love when we have people who aren't so sure about cider or are still kind of on the fence a little bit. So we'd love to know that in the poll. And then also we'd love to know what you're drinking. We'd love to know how many of you are drinking one of our featured ciders tonight. And if you're not drinking one of our featured ciders, that's okay too. What you are drinking, if you're drinking a different cider or something else entirely, which again is also okay. So yeah, so throw it in the chat and let us know. And yeah, Chelsea, thanks. Let us know where you're joining from too. Matt from New Orleans, Chelsea from New York City. Gosh, New York City, I feel like it's as crazier over there than it is in San Francisco here. So hope you're doing well and staying safe and all that good stuff. What a crazy time we're all living through, huh?
It really is.
All right, so let's see. Do we have Eleanor here yet? Doesn't look like it quite yet.
Say that.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Everyone, Amy is from Botanist and Barrel, so they'll be, is that Lyndon with you?
Yeah.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hi, great. So
You got the kid in bed in time.
who is that? Where do I see? Do we have another page?
Eleanor.
Oh, hi, Eleanor.
Eleanor's
Great.
unmuted herself.
We need the gallery view on page 2, maybe.
All right.
All right, cool, awesome. Yeah, and so we have everyone on mute for now, but we definitely want this to be engaging. So we'll talk through a little bit. Evan and I are going to talk for maybe 5 or 7 minutes here. We'll try to move fast so we can get to the
chase.
Get to the main
Get
show.
to the good stuff.
Yes. So yeah, so let us know where you're joining from, what you're drinking, take the poll, all that good stuff. But we'll just kick off and we'll get kicked off here and then we'll start talking to our makers. And look at this, we poured one of each of our Pét Nats, so we're cheating, we're getting started a little early, and look at how different that color is. That's gonna be so fun to compare and contrast, like how different both of these Pét Nat ciders are. I can't wait. So we are here doing these virtual tastings.
Sharing the love of
craft alcohol. Yeah, for sure. So I'm Suzanne, I'm the founder of the Crafty Cask, and our whole mission is all about celebrating and supporting craft alcohol makers. And so we do that through meet the maker events, so in-person events. We've been doing those for a long time, but we also do that through supporting craft makers by teaching them about marketing. So we have a whole craft alcohol online marketing boot camp to teach them the ropes and get the word out there about their brand. And also we do a lot of writing and education to help transform enthusiasts. And like I was saying before, maybe those people who think cider is not for them and think cider is sweet and sticky or any of those old myths, that we try to change their opinions and we try to educate them about all the different fun things about craft alcohol nowadays.
And I'm Evan. I'm a certified sommelier, and hopefully I'll be learning soon if I pass the certified sommelier exam. Amy, I know that that was something that you did, and the test was hard, crazy. It was crazy. So
yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And for
those of you who don't know, there are not many certified sommeliers out there in the world just yet. It's similar to a sommelier, but for cider.
Yeah.
And it's a rigorous, difficult, hard test. And so
my hand was cramped by the end of it. Lots of writing. Goodness.
Yeah, and so Amy is a certified sommelier, so we have an expert among us, and Eleanor is definitely an expert as well. So yeah, so that'll be fun to talk to the two of them. Yeah, so that's who we are and why we're doing what we do. You know, we do these because I'm sure a lot of you have been seeing a lot of virtual happy hours and virtual tastings and all that kind of good stuff coming up. You know, I see lots of articles about them all the time.
Yeah.
But what we noticed was, you know, all these wineries and all these makers were all doing them themselves, and they were trying to figure it out. And this technology is new. Hosting events is not everyone's forte. And honestly, they were only reaching their audiences, because if you're constantly promoting yourself and you're constantly promoting them, like you're reaching your audience over and over. And how many times can you continue to expect your audience to show up for you? And so we had the idea, since I work with lots of craft makers and Evan as a sommelier and wine tour guide, also works with lots of craft makers.
as well.
We kind of had the idea of like, what if we facilitated this for them and helped them reach a broader audience by hosting multiple makers in each one, so they get to meet each other and meet each other's audiences.
Exposing, you know, the fans of Botanist and Barrel to Eden, and the fans of Eden to Botanist and Barrel, because they're both great products. And
exactly.
Now you have another, you know, delightful cider that you can have in your fridge.
Yeah, and so we do these every Thursday right now. We might start doing them more frequently because we have lots of makers lined up. But we have a whole calendar of events. Next week, we have gin from 1-8 Distilling and garden to glass syrups from Simple Goodness Sisters.
And the following week is a Pinot Noir focused tasting event featuring a couple of my favorite Pinot producers here in California, Carpenter Wines and Whetstone Wine Cellars. So I'm pretty excited about that one, and I hope you guys are too.
Yeah, and then we have Mezcal after that, which is super fun. It's May 7th, so it's right after Cinco de Mayo, and it's not often that you get your hands on some really great Mezcal and meet the people who are responsible for bringing it into the country, so that's going to be a fun one too. So yeah, so a whole calendar of events on the craftycask.com under events, virtual tastings, and we hope to see you at more of these.
Yeah,
so
thanks
now
for coming.
Thank you for being here. Maybe let's all do a little quick cheers before we hold it up to your camera so we can kind of get a nice little, I love that, love seeing that. Awesome, perfect. Yeah, so oh, sorry, I always do that.
I'm of the opinion that when you cheers, yum, you need to clink the glasses together and then you need to drink it. You can't clink them and then put them down.
I'm such a talker that I often like clink the glass and then I just start talking again and Evan yells at me. So he has to remind me to drink.
All right, let's rattle through these tech tips real quick so that you guys can get the most out of this experience. We suggest using Zoom and gallery view. It's nice to see all the faces, especially, you know, what we just did there with the cheers, being able to see everybody's smiling faces with their, you know, what they're drinking up there is really fun.
That's up on your right-hand corner. It looks like a little 9 grid. If you just press that button, you'll get to see a lot more faces.
Speaker view is nice when, you know, one of the makers is on talking. We'll also be kind of presenting some images during that time. So when we do a screen share, you'll still see the speaker that's talking as well as the images that we're sharing. Chat box to engage with people when, you know, someone's presenting is advisable. If there is something that you'd like to chime in and ask and say something, and don't feel comfortable just unmuting yourself and doing so, please feel free to type that into the chat bar, and when we have a moment, we'll get to your question or you know, ask you if you'd like to actually ask it yourself, because we'd love for you to be able to talk to the makers here today. And then if you'd like to speak with someone kind of directly in the chat bar, just click on their name and you can send a private message to them. And then the links that we'll be sharing in the chat box, where to buy these lovely products, we'll also make those available in an email that we'll send out tomorrow. So if you don't grab them, don't worry about it. You'll have an opportunity to grab them again or get them in the email. Yeah. And for those of you who want to show your support, you know, finding those links and opening up that email tomorrow and buying some of these ciders is a really great way to support craft makers that really appreciate it right now. And, you know, we would appreciate you appreciating them in that way.
Absolutely. And then if you have a great time tonight and you want to tip your hosts, we will gladly take that too. This time is difficult for all of us. And so you can tip us at the Crafty Cask on Venmo, and we'll throw those links in there as well. But this is really all about the makers, so we won't be talking about that too much. Did you talk about the hand raising?
Oh, that's right. That's another way to kind of get our attention. If you've got something to say, instead of having to type it out in the chat box, just use the hand raise feature in the chat bar.
It basically puts a little blue hand next to your name that lets us know, hey, I want to say something. And that's a great way so we can say, hold on a minute, someone has a question, and let you break in, because like we said, we don't want this to all be about us talking, certainly.
On that note, yeah, let's talk cider, and specifically Pét Nat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pét Nat.
You want to kick off with a little like high level Pét Nat Cider overview, and then we can start to jump into the.
So even higher level than Pét Nat Cider is you know, just Pét Nat. Pét Nat is short for Pétillant Naturel. And synonym for that is a term method ancestral. And Pét Nat is basically where carbonation in beverages comes from. It likely occurred by accident shortly after the first fermentations occurred by accident. You know, there's yeast that just lives in the air. And so beverages that have sugar in them over time will naturally ferment. One of the byproducts of fermentation is carbon dioxide. And so when these beverages were discovered, like, oh, look, this is fermented now. It gives me a nice buzz. This is fun. I want to make more of that, and figuring out the right conditions to be able to make it alcoholic. And then, the conditions that make it alcoholic and make you an entrepreneur, I guess, if you will, because every one of your friends wants to have some of your alcoholic beverage, means that you're going to start selling it and trading it and bartering it. So putting it into a container that you can sell it in often meant sealing that container, and that meant that carbon dioxide that was being produced in fermentation would get trapped in there. So if you bottled it or put it in whatever vessel that you were going to sell it in before the fermentation was done, that would get trapped, and it would actually go into the liquid and become the bubbles in the carbonation in that beverage. So it's basically, we wouldn't have carbonation were it not for this phenomenon and this kind
happy accident. Yes.
ancient method of creating sparkling wine. And it's one of those neat trends of what was old is new again. We're seeing that all over the place with the interest in artisanal methods and bringing the ways of the past back into the norm of production.
Which I know we'll hear a lot about tonight, because both Eden and Botanist and Barrel are really dedicated to kind of foraging and using those like heirloom apples and things of that nature. So I'm sure we'll hear lots about that as well.
Yeah.
Can you just explain quickly like how that differs from the modern method of making champagne bubbles?
Sure.
Things like that, like what the key differences are?
The primary difference is that the sugar and the yeast that create the bubbles in Pét Nat are there from the beginning. With champagne, for example, the base wine is fermented all the way dry, and then it's bottled, and then additional sugar and additional yeast are added to that bottle, and a second fermentation occurs. And that's the primary difference. There's, of course, lots of other ways of carbonating as well. Coca-Cola is just made by forced carbonation. They just stick a hose in there and pump carbon dioxide through until enough of it has absorbed into the liquid. But yeah, that's the primary difference. The carbonation, and you can see here, especially with this example from Eden, the Benjamin, there's sediment that is often found in Pét Nat wines and ciders, given that
Quite enough yet.
you need to have a little bit of that in there most of the time in order to continue that fermentation process. So you can't start the fermentation and then filter it and then put it into the bottle, because you've removed all the yeast from filtration, and so the fermentation doesn't continue in the bottle and it doesn't come out carbonated.
Mm-hmm. Yes, awesome. Anyone have questions about just cider in general, or Pét Nat or anything like that before we kind of hand it over and start talking about our makers? Oh, and we have Elaine joining. Elaine, so Elaine's joining from Vietnam.
Good
and I want to
morning,
see,
Vietnam.
You guys are drinking a cider, right? Unmute yourself for 1 minute, Elaine. So they actually went and found some cider over in Vietnam to join us. Here, I'm going to unmute them. And I'm curious what they're sipping on.
She's getting it. Hold on.
Okay, we need to see. What time is it there right now, Brooks?
7:18.
7 a.m. Nice. Starting their
Breakfast
day
cider.
with some breakfast
All
cider.
right.
Let's see what
This is our cider. It's called Saigon cider. It's a chili, apple and chili cider.
Interesting.
apple and chili cider.
All right.
Interesting. You'll have to let us know how that is once you take a couple
Report
sips.
back.
Is anyone else
We've
drinking
had
any?
it already.
Oh, you did?
It's quite spicy.
Oh, so it's like chili. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Fun. I love that.
Anyone else have something fun that they're excited
sipping
about?
on,
That they're
besides, of course, the amazing things hopefully lots of you are sipping on. What else is everyone drinking? Anyone want to share? No, we're being shy.
That's okay.
All right.
We can be shy.
All right. Okay, let's get started then. So, can you scroll that a little bit?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about the Pét Nat ciders first, because that's kind of the feature, because it is really rare and unique to kind of find Pét Nat ciders still. And so it was so fun to find two makers who wanted to do this, who both made a Pét Nat cider. And so we were like, there's our theme.
Perfect
Let's talk
theme.
about that.
Yeah.
And so we're going to start with those, and we're going to start with Botanist and Barrel and talk about their Pét Nat cider first. Then we'll talk about Eden's Pét Nat cider. And then we're going to go back to Botanist and Barrel and talk about some of their other fun ciders that we have. So we have a sparkling strawberry cider and a skin contact cider as well. And then we'll finish back up with Eden with their kind of flagship and really well-known Heirloom ice cider, which is a really special treat as well. So yes, so that's what we're going to do. So, and we'll of course talk about what we're tasting. We want to know about what you're tasting, drink along with us, all that good stuff.
Share your impressions, please.
Yeah, and ask questions, and we'll jump in and make sure you get space. So with that, we're going to start with Botanist and Barrel. And so they are out in North Carolina. And they've been around since only 2017. So they're a little bit newer to the craft cider scene, which is super exciting to have them here with us. And, their roots and history are really all in foraging and really having a passion for that kind of lifestyle and that kind of really
what the land gives you.
Yeah,
it's
and
really
taste
cool.
of place. And I think there was, I'm gonna get it wrong. We had some notes somewhere about some funny, like something about ugly fruit and like really wanting to like make the best of ugly fruit. And I love that. And so, yeah, so with that, Amy, do you want to unmute yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about, or Evan, you can unmute her too. Tell us a little bit about your story. And Eleanor, give us a wave there so we know you're here from Eden. That's Eleanor, everyone. She's here from Eden. And we also have Garrett and Ben. You guys want to give a wave from Eden? So those are our cider, those are all of our cider pros here.
Cider friends, cider friends.
Exactly. So Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story and how you guys got started? And, as you're talking at a certain point, I'll throw up some of the pictures that we have so people can kind of feel like they're seeing you guys at work and getting a little immersion as well.
Yeah, well, we actually have the whole crew here down below where it says Kether. Kether is my sister-in-law and our cider maker, and Derek, her husband, is our specialty cider maker and jack of all trades. And then we got this guy over here who is also a jack of all trades and our COO, and he's our farmer. I heard
he's your hype man, is that right?
Yeah, I love the term hype man. That's
right.
Great.
Yeah, he does a lot of our social, he does pretty much all of our social media. And
cool, love it.
And all that fun stuff. So, but this is fun. This is new for us to do something like this. I did my first Zoom virtual chat last week on Friday, and it was a lot of fun. Nice. But we are a small farmhouse cidery in Cedar Grove, North Carolina. It's about 30 minutes from anything. But we're on it was originally a blueberry farm. So Lyndon and I's background is in wine. I've sold wine for 15 years, imported wine nationally, and I kind of fell in love with cider in Spain, in the San Sebastian area.
Oh, me too. I have a story like that too. I can't wait to hear yours.
Yes. So yeah, we were traveling on a wine trip, actually, sourcing some chocolate, seeing some producers that we worked with, and I just really fell in love with cider over there and how it paired with food. And we had this opportunity to buy this blueberry farm about 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. And Lyndon wanted to make blueberry wine and I wanted to make cider.
We do make blueberry wine.
We do. We also make blueberry wine.
Oh, that's fun.
So it wasn't a tug of war that had to end. You get to keep vying for superiority, huh?
That's right. Well, we were like, what grows well in North Carolina? And it's really, I mean, apples. I mean, grapes, yes, we have grapes here and we do make a little bit of wine as well. But we really wanted to work with what the land provided and really show what Southern terroir looks like without adding, manipulating it with all these different things. I really thought there was a great need for a more natural product when it comes to cider, and instead of all the mass marketed produced ciders,
for sure,
to show a little bit how cider is like wine, how cider is like beer, and how cider is just its own thing. So I think that we've had a lot of fun doing that the past couple years. I think it's going to be our 3rd anniversary in June this year.
Nice.
And so my 2-year-old just started talking to me. Yeah, Linda, do you want to say some stuff about?
I mean, the quick and short of it is in the South, there was just a huge void for anybody making natural cider. And so in the South, you would need to travel to Texas, and the next closest person is Richmond, to find someone who's making an unmanipulated or making Pét Nat cider down here in what we call the Dirty South. And so our goal is to just try to show Southern terroir in a bottle. So we use, we use this term hyper-local. It's kind of been, I think, overused a little bit, but it's something we take completely to heart. So I don't ever like the word always or ever, because there are always exceptions. We like to mess around with some fruits that aren't grown in North Carolina too, or down here in the South, but pretty much everything is sourced within 200 miles of our farm.
Wow.
And then we, both my sister and I grew up foraging as kids. And so this is kind of near and dear to us, and we continue to do it as adults. And actually the picture up on the screen right there, those little baby apples, those are foraged from in the Appalachian Mountains, just right outside of Boone.
Lyndon's our in-house forager.
Yeah.
He likes to run up mountains and down them with apples in a backpack.
Some of the foraging isn't exactly on legal land, so you got to be at
Apple CrossFit.
Exactly. So about 10% of what goes in our product is either grown on our farm or foraged, and then we're in the process of planting and experimenting with some southern. Or with some really interesting apples that haven't ever been tried in the South before.
Cool.
We have no idea how that's going to go. We'll know in probably 7 years.
Nice. That's exciting. So what inspired making a Pét Nat cider?
So as our background being in wine, we specialized in natural wines and biodynamic wines. And I really love this style of winemaking. And I think it's actually most beautiful form is with apples. I prefer Pét Nat ciders over most Pét Nat wines personally. So I just think apples are made for this type of natural product, and I would make everything like this if we could.
I mean, I think part of the fun of Pét Nat is, you kind of see two schools of Pét Nat, from where I sit at least, and you see people that I call it like Pét Nat for the people. So where Pét Nat isn't put on a pedestal, and it's just a very simple kind of like everyday kind of thing. And then you see Pét Nat where it's where you take the best fruit that you could possibly get your hands on, and you try to make the most unadulterated, unmanipulated, most pure, beautiful product. Both of them are awesome. Our kind of approach on Pét Nat has just been more of like the field blend style. So we make a very, I guess I would call it a very humble Pét Nat. It's not, it's just meant for everyday consumption. It's supposed to just be.
It's a blend of eating apples and some cider apples. Lyndon knows.
Yeah, it's an orchard blend. It's just whatever is present that day. It's a little snapshot in time of what was harvested in that particular time from that particular orchard. Just very simple and not over complicating on the orcharding or farming side, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, when we first tasted this a while back, or
Yeah, when
a few
was
days
that?
ago, I can't remember, but it's been I think it was actually Good Food Awards. You guys enter this in the Good Food Awards competition, maybe, I think.
Yeah.
And I
Were
think
you guys judges there?
yeah, well, we were volunteers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were shepherding all the cider back and forth for the judges, and we got to try it
some
all along the
leftovers.
way. And so, yeah, and I remember opening the bottle and just being like, oh my gosh, like what is
Yeah.
this? This is amazing. And when we revisited it a few days ago in preparation for this, we were both kind of saying how, like, the nose has like a little bit of funkiness that you expect from Pét Nat, but the taste was like a lot cleaner than some Pét Nats that we've encountered for sure.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's intentional or if there's kind of like a, you know, that's what you're going for, and or if you have any thoughts about that.
And I felt like it. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, our natural culture that we have in the winery is a very clean culture. So I mean, not, you know, and everything's different. I mean, we have other Pét Nats that have been really funky, and I think it also depends on the apples and what's on, you know, what kind of yeast is on the apple skins, or so it really varies quite a lot. But for the most part, yeah, our culture that's like living in the winery is just a very nice, clean, and we're a very clean winery because we well, we make wine, we make cider, we make blueberry wine, so and we don't add any sulfites to anything or any other sort of additives. And so we really just have to work with what we got, and being clean is one of the most important things. I'm sure Heather could tell you more about.
I mean, one of the things that, you know, there's a lot of different schools of thought on where yeast that is doing the work of Pét Nat comes from. So it could come from the press, it can come from the air in your winery, it can come from the apple skins themselves. It's probably a combination of all of them. And when we first started making Pét Nats, we experimented with lots of different things, and we found that certain sections of certain orchards had much better success than others. And that probably, I mean, there's lots of different variables involved in that. Yeah, and so I'm gonna say that I know exactly what's causing what to happen and making that link. But yeah, I mean, it's, as time has gone on, we found that our winery has, I guess, like fine-tuned itself. Some of maybe the weaker strains have I guess just gone to the wayside, and some of the stronger ones, and we're really, really happy with the way the Pét Nat shows. The last two vintages have just been, you know, really kind of, I guess, debunking the myth that all Pét Nats have to be super barnyardy and funky kind of thing. And I think you'll see the same thing with Eden's Pét Nats. There was a whole group of us at the cider convention that were drinking a lot of Pét Nats, and I was kind of blown away by just the amazing quality of a lot of these things, and how just clean and bright and refreshing, and I don't know the right language for all this stuff.
No, I think all of those things ring true to me. I mean, I think that if any of you haven't actually seen what the bottle looks like, I think it's brilliant. I actually studied mathematics, so this certainly stuck fancy for me.
Tickles his soul.
Yeah, and it really rings true to, I think, what the flavor profile of this you know, Pét Nat cider is that it's expressive through the nuance, and in being, you know, having that kind of linear texture and mouthfeel allows for the you know, the funk that is there to be really pleasant and not overwhelming, because it doesn't have to be to stand up to other fruit characteristics that are going on in there. Yeah, it's yeah, quite compelling.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like Eleanor's drinking it over there and says she loves it. And
Cool.
And then,
I just did my first side-by-side. Now I
know. That's fun, right?
I've been drinking Eleanor's this whole time, and now I just poured some over. That's really fun.
Yeah. And then Brady is saying it has a great depth of flavor. Lance and Lauren, great. And I'm going to throw up a cider tasting mat here right now for a second here. If anyone is like us, so I'm a market researcher by trade, and Evan's, you know, math too. And so we like to geek out a little bit sometimes. And especially when we do side-by-sides, it's kind of fun to use these cider mat tasting wheels and kind of chart like this one is like that versus this one is like that, and really see what you pick up. So I'm going to throw a link in there. Oh, Evan beat me to it. But you can go grab the cider tasting mat. We should have sent it out in advance, but you can print it out and play around with it. And it's just kind of fun to, like, especially if you're learning about cider and you're learning about your palate and what you like and what you don't like, it can be a really fun way to kind of teach yourself why you like this cider, but you don't like that cider, and start to be able to articulate it. So then when you go to bars and restaurants, when we're allowed to do all that again, that you can kind of say to the person like, oh, you have 3 ciders there. I like my ciders more like this, so that, you know, you can do that. Oh yeah, Evan's throwing it up there.
So yeah, you can kind of get an idea. And the fun thing to do with this is kind of mark on that, you know, spider web looking thing, where it lands on the scale for each of those. And then you can kind of connect the dots and you get I guess like a footprint of the profile of that particular product. And then you can do it in different colors and get a kind of a comparison of a few different ciders side by side, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun little home tool to play around with.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd be interested to know what Laura Butler thinks about it, because I believe she told me she doesn't like Pét Nats. Is that right, Laura? We did a little cider trade once.
Right. I'm drinking Eleanor's right now, and I really like it.
Yeah, awesome.
We got it in our last member box, and we hadn't broken into it yet, but it was in the fridge, so this is really good timing.
Perfect.
Yeah, see, so they're not all funky and weird.
No, we don't have any of yours right now, and I don't remember if I'd gotten yours.
I think I remember you saying I don't like Pét Nats or something, and I was like,
blasphemy.
Exactly.
Semi-sweet or semi-dries. I don't tend to go the funky ones, but the funky is growing on me.
Awesome.
That's good.
That's what we like to hear. We like moving towards things, and yeah,
you know,
it's fun.
It's changed a lot in the last 2 years.
Speaking of funkiness, just really briefly, I came across some interesting language in something that you sent us, Amy, and it was about you know, the influence of brewers and winemakers and distillers, how they've kind of influenced your use of technology and, you know, traditional approaches in your in your cider making. And then additionally, so I was kind of curious, you know, maybe an example of one of those, and then also the collaborations that you've done with, I think it was cheesemakers and tea makers, and I'm not sure, but if you could share with us maybe just an example of one of those kind of crossovers in terms of your production style, and then also one of the collaborations that you've been, you know, particularly delighted with or proud of. We were just curious because that sounded really cool.
Yes, so many collaborations. I think that's what it's all about, really, is to kind of work together. And that's one thing I really love about cider is that there are not as many rules, like as in wine, which was most of my career. Can be very stuffy and strict. And cider, you can still have, you know, your standards of, you know, this is this low manipulation product, made with wild fermentation and to show the natural southern terroir. But then you can also play and have great fun with collaborations such as like Asheville Tea Company. We've done 2 or 3 different ciders with her now. We've done Shy of the Tiger with her tea. We just did a new one that this was actually not even a cider though. That was, we made cucumber wine for the first time ever with she makes a G&T, gin botanical tea that we infused with that with some ginger and some other fun stuff.
Wait, I see someone with.
And then we have some amazing cheese producers. Oh yeah.
Someone has cucumber cup.
No, I don't know.
That went super fast.
I saw someone holding up, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes, there it is.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, that was totally, you know, we like to have beef, you know, that was a total experiment just to see what would happen.
Well, someone showed up with 500 gallons of cucumber.
A farmer just gave us a tote of cucumber
so
juice.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, we're like,
you ferment it.
We'll figure it out.
That's really
it turned out great.
Who's in charge of naming for you guys? All of your brand names for all of your bottles and everything are so fun. Is that one of you guys? Is that collaborative? How do you guys come up with these fun names?
Yeah, it's totally collaborative. I mean, yeah, the four of us, so Heather and Derek and Lyndon and I, all kind of shoot things around, and
You're just good quirky wordsmithers.
We love a really, I mean, if you don't love a bad pun,
we do a lot of puns. Yeah.
something's wrong with you.
For sure.
So
I
you were
torture with
asking
them all the time.
You were asking about an influence from the brewing community or winemaking community. And so when I got like the bug for adult beverage was when I had a Pét Nat from this place in France called Jura. And so this is a place where they intentionally oxidize wine, and it gets this like underripe black walnut, this like super nuttiness that I'm kind of obsessed with.
Yeah, Benjamin is amazing.
Yeah, it's just kind of mind-blowing stuff. So
And for those of you guys that don't know what that is, that's kind of like a baby sherry. So like, you know, it has those like really nutty qualities, but not quite all the way.
I like that analogy. That's good, Amy.
in modern winemaking and cider making, in beer and brewing too, oxidizing is really frowned upon. It's considered a really big time flaw.
Yeah.
But we kind of embrace this, so we intentionally oxidize certain wines and certain ciders and kind of go down that path and make really interesting, kind of very nutty kind of ciders. And we actually make one of my favorite things we make is not a cider. It's a peach wine that we oxidize in a rum barrel. And it's super, super nutty and is super fun. And then actually we have Heirloom Distilling. The name is Courtney Waite. And we're doing a really interesting project talking about collaborations with them. So that's Rhett down there with Heirloom. And so
with the Rasta wig.
Okay.
Not his hair.
So we're making we made a peach wine. This comes from this old cocktail called Fishbowl Punch. So like Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, when they were writing important documents back in the day, were kind of drinking this thing, right? And so it involved this peach brandy. So it was peach wine, barrel fermented, and then distilled, and then aged on the peach almond. And so we're doing this right now with Heirloom. I don't know that we'll ever do it again because it's the most labor-intensive thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But it's going to be really fun.
It's going to be a beautiful thing eventually. Yeah. So Rhett makes mostly Amaros from Asheville, North Carolina.
Okay.
And and so we love collaborating. I'm actually working on Eleanor to do a collaboration. I'm working on her. I've been talking with Garrett, her cider maker, a lot.
On that note, why don't we go ahead and kick it over to Eleanor and hear about this lovely Benjamin Pét Nat. Eleanor, here, let's.
I got it.
There you are.
There you go.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask for some help in doing this. Garrett.
We'll unmute all of them too.
Yeah. Garrett's our head cider maker, so he joined us in 2017. And Ben Applegate, after whom Benjamin is named, is our orchard manager, and he was our first employee back in 2009. Has been with us and is really, we planted 1,000 trees in 2008, 9, and 10. Over 50 varieties. It's been a huge experiment, and it's been totally natural, holistic, biodynamic from the beginning. And Ben is really the one who's built that program for us. And I think the first 5 or 6 years, you know, we wondered whether we would ever see fruit off of any of those trees. But little by little, they've started bearing fruit, and we've got more than we probably even ever imagined we could. So not that it's a lot, but it's been really fun to start making ciders just from the fruit from this orchard. And so I'd love for Ben to just spend a couple minutes talking about the orchard, and then Garrett to tell you kind of how the cider came into being.
And hey, Garrett, just so you know, we can't unmute you from our end for some reason. So, there you go. Perfect. All right. But Ben, I think you're unmuted. So yeah, tell us a little bit about
Yeah, so I come from a forestry background initially, did work as a forester, and then also kind of got into arborist work about 15 years ago, and that brought me to doing a lot of apple tree pruning. And then I met actually Eleanor at pruning workshop and kind of very soon found myself taking care of a young orchard. And so anyway, the importance of the forestry background and the forest ecology background was really my mindset was wrapped around the importance of the microbial world, particularly around mycorrhizae, kind of the fungal associations that happen with tree roots and how they interact with the soil, both with other trees and of course with all the nutrients and water that they're trying to uptake into their systems. So just had that kind of angle lens in approaching orcharding work, so kind of a different route than the typical horticultural avenue. So that really influenced me to try to seek out alternatives to spraying fungicides and herbicides. So that led me to a number of interesting folks in the New England area that have been tinkering for many years, and that work is ongoing, and it's really fascinating to try to grow fruit in this holistic method, and really trying to support the microbial life, but also the trees as organisms that live within a system with a certain amount of stress, just as all we do and how we live in the world. And so not trying to annihilate everything and making a perfect kind of sterile environment, but rather having an orchard full of all kinds of life. So that's been kind of the methodology around it, and a lot of trial and error, and some things don't work out, but I feel like it's a really healthy place to work and live, and there's a lot of success with the trees as well. So it's been quite a journey, and really loving the work. And we've noticed, Garrett and I have noticed, just in some of the varieties of apples that we grow and that we also purchase, that we can get some really interesting flavors out of our fruit that are somewhat absent in other apples coming from other orchards, just I think because our trees are under a little bit more stress, and they have to develop alternative terpenoids or all these kinds of compounds that trees use to protect themselves against disease or other insect pests. So I think that certainly adds to really complex flavors in Pét Nat. So yeah, that's my spiel. I'll let Garrett kind of take over from there on cider making.
Thanks, Ben. That was fascinating. That's, the communication between trees through the microbes is something that I find to be like totally amazing. The fact that they can kind of talk to each other is so cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, this is a whole movement too around, kind of ecological farming and gardening, and how just as in so many of our systems, whether they're terrestrial or in the kind of wetlands or even in the oceans, there's just so many interconnections, and that everything is hinged upon one another, and you want a really robust ecosystem with lots of species and a lot of interactions between these niches that are available. So that is really what we mean by resiliency in the farming world. And so and I love, just back to what Amy's doing, just like using all kinds of fruits is really cool. Seeing those pictures now of elderberry, and I think our orchards, hopefully of the future, are just like filled with all kinds of stuff. It's not just any one fruit. It's just a whole plethora of both, things that we can use to ferment, but also just interesting things aesthetically, and also that are attracting pollinators and, bringing in insects that predate on antagonistic organisms. So it's exciting. And I think there's a lot of growth that can happen in the next, few generations here. So really, exciting times ahead.
Very much so.
So I have to take us on a little tangent for a minute with this whole trees talking to each other thing. because it feels like this like sci-fi
Lord of the Rings.
that doesn't really happen thing. But like years ago, I was lucky enough to get to go to Africa and go on a safari, and there's these like yellow tipped flowered trees all over the place, and the giraffes love to eat them. And so the giraffes just feed on them all the time. And there gets to be a certain point where these trees, they start to get overeaten, overgrazed, and they become like endangered of like, if the giraffes keep eating this one plot of trees, we're gonna have a problem here. And the trees literally like send a signal to the other trees around them nearby, and they change the way like the thorns grow so that when the giraffes go to eat them, it spikes them and they have to move on to another area to go keep grazing on these trees. And so they literally like protect themselves from overgrazing by this weird like plant communication. And it's just like,
so cool.
that like just like blew my mind so much. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? Trees talk to each other? Like, what world are we living in?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's amazing what nature can do.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the other thing that along those lines is there's some research showing that there's pheromones released that may be carried on the wind and allow neighboring trees to increase bitterness in their foliage so that they become less palatable to whatever's grazing on them. So yeah, really cool stuff.
Yeah, for sure. We have some questions coming in here. So Ben, Anne Marie and David, if you want to unmute yourselves, you can kind of talk to Ben directly here. Or you can tell us. I think we can hear you. Behind him.
Looking.
Where'd you go? Where'd you go? There we go. It's so weird. I'm having issues unmuting people today. Well, if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead. But they said they understand that you grow Grimes golden apples, and so they do too, about 1,000 miles south of you. And they've promised Ellie that they'll send you all of them when there's ripen in August, and you're still waiting.
Yes.
So yay, apple trade coming your way.
Yes, yeah, no, we won't send a tree. We'll send, actually, we will pick from among many trees, like the very prettiest Grimes golden apples that we can find. And we will pretend like all our apples look like that.
Yeah. Love it.
Anne Marie's here too. I don't know if we're going to enable the, we've had the camera off.
Enable the camera. We were eating dinner.
Yeah, we were eating pizza.
It's all right. You can make us all jealous with your pizza.
Yeah.
All right. No, you don't need to hear from us. I'm enjoying listening to our cider makers. Thank you.
Oh, good. That's great. And then there's another question about Basque. And so, Amy, we'll circle back to talk about that because I'd love to talk about the Basque culture and cider because that's kind of where my love of cider started too. So when we circle back around.
Yeah. Thanks for that question, Brady.
Yeah, we'll definitely cover that. I think that's a great question.
Let's kick it over to Garrett here.
Yeah.
To talk a little bit more about this Pét Nat Benjamin then.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think in 2018 harvest, Eleanor had the idea to try out, give us the idea of making a Pét Nat. And if anybody ever, remembers the Pét Nat, GNAT, that was our first.
Ed Stafford's got a bottle of it right now. And can you hold it up, Ed? The original one?
Okay.
Talking about bad puns.
Yeah. Yeah, with the little fly drawing and
we had a gnat drawn on it. It was a pet GNAT gnat. So yeah, that was the first one.
Ed, put it back up there for 1 second so everyone can see it. Oh yeah.
That's
I love it.
Very good.
Cool.
So that was our first. That was our first kind of, attempt at a full Pét Nat. And it was kind of a, bit of a funny story. We started the fermentation in December on that one and didn't really time it well because everybody went away for Christmas. So we had to crash the tank right before Christmas. And then when we came back, we quick bottled it. And it was pretty, we were lucky to catch it and it was pretty awesome. But basically harvest 2019, we had a good amount of acidic fruit coming in from our trees. Our bittersweet and bitter sharp trees were kind of off. It was an off year. So Alexandra and I and Ben all went out and picked over about a month and a little over a month, probably 40 days, picked different trees ripening, the best fruit off of every tree. And then I'm a big fan of, it was basically a big orchard blend of our best fruit, about 14 different varieties. And I'm a big fan of, cultured wild ferments. So starting a wild ferment in a carboy or a couple carboys a week before and letting it get started and then pitching it into the cider, just so we get a little bit more of a clean ferment, get our yeast populations up of whatever was going on in that original cider. So this cider didn't exactly settle. I tried to settle it, and for some reason it would not settle prior to fermentation. So I just kind of rolled with it, and that's why there's a lot of, it was a happy mistake too. I'm really glad that it does have this sediment because the acid is high.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty voracious.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fun. I really like that.
I'd love to talk about some of these varieties if
Yeah.
is it
I have the list up.
Yeah, if you have a bottle of it, that we always now on all of our labels.
It's on the side.
Put all the list, all the apple varieties on the label.
Yeah.
And Grimes Golden is on there, David.
Grimes Golden is.
If you want to share your screen, I think you can share your screen. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
I cannot.
I'm holding it up. I don't know if you can see the list.
Here, I can try to, yeah.
Did you say anything?
Over.
Did you say anything?
My screen.
I can't see.
Oh yeah, look at all those. Northern Spy, Golden Russet, Grimes Golden, Esopus, Pittsburgh, Michelin, Ashmead's Kernel, Baldwin,
Oh
Rhode
yeah,
Island
she's right
Green.
here. Let's see if we can
cool.
do this too, so people can kind of see.
Yeah, I don't know if-
Like cancel the spotlight. It's a little small, but you tell me.
No, it's too bright. It's just like a page. Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Oh wait.
Maybe if we turn the spotlight back on.
Yeah. So they're old French varieties in our orchard. We have a few English varieties. One of the things, if you're tasting this, you're going to taste tannin in addition to the acidity, and that's, those apples are fairly rare in this country still, and it's been interesting to try and grow some of them where we are, but it definitely gives it a little more oomph.
Yeah, definitely some grip.
For sure. Hey, Eleanor, I would love it if you would tell us a little bit of the story of how Eden got started, and just touch on that. And I can just throw up some of these pictures that you sent us to kind of bring it to life for people, because you guys have been around since when? Since 2007?
Yeah, so actually, I feel a real affinity for Amy and her crew, because it's a similar story. We just got started a little while ago. We were able to buy an old abandoned dairy farm up in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. We're about 8 miles from the Canadian border at the farm.
Okay.
Started planting trees. My first experience with cider was when I was 16 and was in France, in the north of France, and discovered I could drink alcoholic beverages.
Totally.
That was super fun. And then I think we really fell in love with the idea of making ice cider, which is what we started in. When we got started in 2007, cider was not a thing that anybody in this country really knew much about. There was like woodchuck. Ice cider, which is something that was developed in southern Quebec only about 20, 25 years ago, really felt like Vermont terroir. So, super cold weather, lots of interesting apples. We can do that really well. Most places in the country can't. It's a very narrow band of climate where you're warm enough to grow apples and cold enough to make ice cider naturally outdoors in the winter on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
And you could believe that the best ice cider in the world could come from northern Vermont. You know, it's like, that's the place it should come from. Red wine, maybe not so much.
Sure.
So that's what got us started. And then in the process, we discovered cider from some friends of ours down the road, Poverty Lane Orchards, Farnham Hill. And just really that's been more of our model in terms of not going after a particularly European style. I mean, the British ciders are incredibly tannic, and the French ciders are pretty sweet, and the Basque ciders are super high acid.
Funky. Pretty funky.
And we really came at it from the point of view of, we want to grow amazing, interesting fruit that lends great character to a fermented beverage. And then make sure that whatever we make, it expresses the quality of that fruit, and that you really taste apple character in our ciders. We've made, I think, 23 different ciders over the years.
Wow.
Because we would get bored, but also we love the challenge of saying, hey, let's try and make a Pét Nat, or let's make something that's like tannic but has some residual sweetness. How would we do that? Let's make something that's an aperitif that's super strong and infused with botanicals for cocktails. And it makes it fun, but we hope that whichever one of those catches your fancy, you're going to get something that is really expressive of whole natural ingredients sourced locally, and made without a whole lot of intervention. You know, in some cases we filter things that have residual sweetness. We don't like them to start re-fermenting and create bottle bombs. So, but that's really our mission. And in part of that is working with wonderful small orchards around Vermont who are also growing interesting fruit. So because we got started so early, we tend to have the relationships to be able to get our hands on cool stuff.
Yeah, I like on your website, it kind of talks a little bit about, you know, by supporting Eden, you're not just supporting Eden, but you're supporting all of these other apple growers and kind of your local community that you guys have formed relationships with over years and years, and keep working with them. And you guys are kind of in it together. And if it's a bad season, it's a bad season for all of you, and you're supporting each other. And if it's a good season, it's good. So it's nice. It's nice that it's like, not only if you take advantage and kind of buy some of the Eden ciders tonight, are you supporting Eden, but you're also supporting the Vermont kind of local community, which is really great. Especially, you know, I'm from New England, so when you get that far up north, it gets like you need each other, you need support. You know, you're not close to the infrastructure of everything else where you can quickly and easily just go fix everything and go take. See, the community part is really important and really kind of near and dear to my heart as well, and part of the Crafty Cask's mission. So it's lovely. And I know Botanist and Barrel is kind of the same way. So it's nice to have both of you on here.
Yeah, it's a vibrant message that I think is resonating a lot with people right now, as they're realizing how important the community that they do have is, and the people that, you know, maybe don't have much of a community are realizing that they wish they did as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the nicest compliments we've gotten on these events so far was someone saying they had this nice turn of phrase about how in the digital age that we live in nowadays, you know, what did they say? It was
the radius of local is precisely the world.
Right, because of the digital world. And it feels that way, that like local, and they were saying, you know, these virtual tasting events are making craft not feel so local. It's actually making it feel like, yes, I can support craft and I don't have to be in their backyard to support them necessarily. Right. There are now becoming ways that when you find that lovely craft maker, when you're on summer vacation in Vermont, you can order them and you can still support them and have their ciders in your fridge and still be supporting them from afar, which is really nice. So yeah.
I'd like to do one little more quick shout out if you don't mind. Laura and Townley Chisholm are on, and they're wonderful friends, and they were involved in the very first apple pressing we ever did.
Oh, how cool. Fun.
Thanksgiving of 2007, so
they are longtime supporters and lovers of Eden, it sounds like, huh, Laura? Yeah, that's great. I love that. So yeah, so let's
we should
hop
probably
on over and do some
back.
quick kind of tasting notes on these other ones that we want to try, because we don't want to run out of time for that. And while Evan and I are always happy to hang around and keep drinking and talking booze longer, we want to be respectful of our makers and people who have to have kids and get up in the morning and, you know, like we all do. So we were thinking, hey, Amy, do you want to, actually, let's give a little cheers to both Botanist and Barrel and Eden for giving us all that great information. Can we all do one more little cheers as a thank you to, like, thank you for sharing with us and thank you for kind of giving us that great, great overview. Thank you guys. That was great. I love seeing what you guys are doing and learning about it. And
the other guy we should talk about is this is Albert, my husband. This is our first head cider maker for the first 6 years.
Thanks for joining, Albert.
Love it.
Welcome. You guys are drinking good cider.
We sure are.
We do our best.
Yeah, for sure. So Amy, what do you think we should drink next? Should we do the skin contact first or the sparkling strawberry?
Yeah, let's stick with the wild stuff. We'll go skin contact.
Yay, fun.
So this is another completely wild fermented cider. The only difference is we re-fermented on some Montmorency cherry skins during the fermentation. So it's gonna have, it's one of the more complex ciders that we make. Yeah.
It is though.
Yeah, especially considering there's cherries, cherry skins.
Yeah, so I do not like cherries, and I hate cherry cider. Personally, it's just like my least favorite thing, which is, you know, it's, you know, a lot of people make cherry cider. But
little pink. Yeah, just a little touch of pink.
Yes, it's very the Provence pink. I was really surprised how much I loved this cider when we made this. So there's no juice, and there's actually the almonds of the cherry in this as well, which I think gives it a real nutty kind of flavor. You almost get like this kind of like baking spice, nutmeg thing going on. It's
ooh. Yeah, there is that like nuttiness to it that I wasn't expecting at all, even though you just said it, and I should have been based on you saying that. But there is that real like almost chewiness to it.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Actually, I love the story. The story, the first time we made this, it was kind of an accident experiment. It was a collaboration with an account of ours. And we didn't have enough space at our winery. This is totally illegal. I hope there's nobody that works for ALE.
This is all off the record, everyone.
Off the record, we may have fermented this outside in a barn. You know, like Eleanor is allowed to ferment outside, obviously, but in North Carolina, we're not allowed to do that. So we just had an extra tote of juice with nowhere to put it. So we stuck it outside with the tractor. We have no machinery in our winery besides a pressure washer. So we don't have a forklift or anything. So we use the tractor a lot to get things moved around outside. So
there's this barn we have on the backside of the property that has old flowers that are drying. And so I thought there might be some really interesting cultures there happening. So we had this excess juice we just couldn't fit inside because we have a very small kind of tight space. And so we put it back there in that barn, and it started to show really nicely and really interesting. And so when we could bring it back inside the winery, we had just pressed off a bunch of, we make this cherry wine that I call lawnmower and cherry wine. It's like very light and sessionable. Like lawnmower and cherry wine's a thing. I just
dry, fruity,
funky, like watermelon cherry wine, you know.
Exactly. And so we have, you know, part of I guess our ethos is to have zero food waste. And so we didn't want to, you know, you have these skins, and this is the first time we made this. As it was kind of, we call them kind of ciders or wines of opportunity. So these kind of things just present themselves, like the cucumber wine. And so with this, it just seemed like a really good marriage to kind of take this opportunity to play with those things. And then we kind of all fell in love with it, and it's become something that we do regularly now.
Yeah, we can stop making our cherry cider now.
Yeah, it's like, let's get rid of the juice just so we can have the skins.
Right.
Because it's a much more interesting expression than with the juice. When it's the whole cherry, it becomes too cherry, and you lose
the apple.
Yeah, this is subtle and nuanced, and
I think you get a good mix of the wild fermentation of the apple and the cherry skins. This one's I'm drinking it kind of warm right now, so it's showing even more of those cherry flavors. But
yeah, it's really, really nice.
I
was probably like, my brain was expecting something a little different, I think, even though I knew it was cherry skins, because I was thinking skin contact, like wine, like orange wines, and and Pét Nat too. I'm a really big funk lover. Like, I really like that barnyardy, cheesy, hay. And so this has a different angle on that, but it is really like that depth of flavor and that like chewiness, like I was saying, where it almost feels like I have a little bit of like that almondy cherry in my mouth. It's really nice.
I like that word chewy for this. That's, I think, the perfect description for this.
Yeah. Haha, sommelier.
Yeah,
I got the
That's an excellent description. No, definitely, because it does have some, some texture that you can get, a little bit of kind of grip around your teeth, but then with the bubbles still, they play off each other very nicely. I feel like it's rare to see things that are carbonated, but also that have tannins.
Yeah, it almost has this like bitter quality that's very like aperitif-like, or like I love this. I think this is a great after dinner drink with some dark chocolate or we've been eating, I don't know if you know, we've been eating a lot while we've been drinking, and we've got some local cheeses that are about a quarter mile from our farm, another cheese maker, Boxcar Farms, that we collaborate with. They do a lot of wash rind cheeses with our ciders, and we do a lot of cheese and cider trades. So, we eat a
lot of cheese.
We are fat in cheese here at we do, and some beautiful.
I eat a lot of cheese too, but I'm jealous of your cheese because I'm sure it's different than the cheese here. We'll have to do a cheese swap.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That would be awesome. Yes, California.
Yeah, we eat way too much cheese.
Sonoma County makes some pretty nice cheeses.
Yeah.
All right, let's try out this strawberry sparkling. Lance already cracked his open, and he's making me jealous with it. He's saying how much he's loving it. So here, I'll pour mine into yours.
So, this cider has become, I don't know how to say this right. This is, I guess, become one of the, where Pét Nat is what speaks to our hearts. But I guess the strawberry I kind of look at as the intro to Botanist in Barrel. So it has no residual sugar, but it's got this kind of sense of fruitiness that is, I don't know, it just kind of, it speaks to people. So this has become our #1 seller by volume. And so this is co-fermented. Yeah, it's this co-fermented with strawberry, and it's the whole strawberry, including the green tops, the seed, all of it. And then
the secret.
That's the secret, I guess. And then we condition with some fresh strawberry juice and puree as well. So this is, I guess it's not 100% true to Pét Nat style because you are adding something, but this is
another natural cider where you're adding juice and not sugar, not the traditional champagne method where you're just adding fresh juice.
And so you get this amazing expression of strawberry, but it's not overpowering. Again, it's subtle. Everything we try to do is subtle, where nothing is overpowering.
So look at the color of this one. So this is the strawberry sparkling.
Kind of an orangey pink.
Yeah. It's funny. It's opposite. I would have expected the skin contact to be more this color and the strawberry to be the other. That's kind of fun.
There's a lot of strawberry in there.
So I love dropping in like a fresh strawberry and some cava or cremant or something, not champagne maybe, but and so that's what this reminds me of and strawberry is my favorite fruit, actually. I hate cherries. I love strawberries, but there's a strawberry farm right down the road from us here at Botanist and Barrels. So this is one of the ciders that we do make in a modern style. We make it all year round, and that, it doesn't take 6 to 12 months to make like most of our other ciders. So, I'm happy it's popular because it's a little bit easier to make for us year round. And we buy, it's always from North Carolina strawberries, or we do buy some South Carolina strawberries sometimes. Yeah. Carolina strawberries. Yes, but in the season we just go down to our neighbors at McAdam Farms, and we all pick that back-breaking work bending over. I like our blueberries because they're nice and tall, and you don't have to bend over so much.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I used to pick strawberries when I was a kid, and that's the best thing to do when you're a kid because you're already low to the ground. But it's hard work otherwise. This is really nice. We drank some of this the other night as well, and this immediately for me is like strawberries and cream. There's like some kind of like a creaminess to it that like is like strawberries and whipped cream. Like it just tastes like that kind of level of strawberry to me. And I'm actually not the biggest fan of strawberry flavor. Like I like strawberries fresh, but so I'm always a little like, and this is like a nice, again, both of them are such a nice light touch of the essence that it's not like overpowering at all. And it's
there has to be something very ephemeral about this flavor profile, because it kind of reminds me, I watched this documentary that was about Milk Bar. So the pastry chef who plays on old school cereals, like cereals we ate when we were kids. So there's like the Cocoa Puff, pastry. And I think that's why Milk Bar is so successful, is because there's that ephemeral quality to things. And this must have it. I don't have it personally with this particular cider. I don't have that ephemeral connection, but it must exist for people. Yeah. I know Eleanor just said something about strawberry shortcake, and there's got to be a connection, because otherwise I don't know why. I mean, it has this thing that is kind of, that we're not aware of, or I'm not aware of, but that it touches other people in a really unique way. And I think that's, it's really cool to see.
It really does. I think Eleanor might be onto something. I do think it harkens to like a childhood memory of strawberry shortcake a little bit. And that most of us, especially, I feel like that is a little bit more of I think New England in particular, strawberry shortcake is a very big dessert in the summer. And so for me, I think you're right. It's like a little biscuity. So it does have that the yeasty biscuity part of it, but then it's a little creamy too. And then you get that strawberry. It's really, really lovely.
Yeah, I can't remember the term offhand. It's a Latin word. It basically draws the kind of idea of an oral connection, or rather an olfactory connection that strikes something in the memory, since that is, the most direct pathway in the sensory capacity. Your sense of smell is the one that connects most directly to your memories in the hippocampus. And this really, I think, the strawberry shortcake, Eleanor, when you said that, I was like, yes. Yeah. But it's distinct because it's not the strawberry shortcake that you'd get out of a box.
No, it's the homemade biscuits, and it's the homemade whipped cream.
There's vanilla in the cream, but there's not a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
There's vinegar and black pepper and stuff like that mixed in with the strawberries.
Nice.
The green tops and the black seeds and strawberry, using all the fruit, no waste. Things. Yeah. I didn't touch on this earlier, which is crazy, but every cider that we make has 0 residual sugar, besides the Pét Nat, because you don't really know exactly. There's usually maybe, I would say, a 0.5 gram of residual sugar in our less is more Pét Nat, because we don't really know where it stops exactly every time. But all of our ciders do have 0 residual sugar. That's part of making natural cider. Like I was saying, we don't have any, machinery or we don't have a place to cold crash, or we're not in Vermont where we have the luxury to where it's really cold. We could just stick it outside.
A little bit jealous.
Very jealous. Very, very jealous. I want some of that ice cider to condition with sometime. Maybe in our collaboration.
I think that's actually a great note. Zero residual sugar. let's go to something, now for something completely different.
Completely different. A cider with no, never mind.
Yeah. Well, and especially I put up some of those pictures before and I can throw them up again of like you're, Eden in the middle of winter. And it is quite a unique experience. It is quite a unique situation. We're using our Coravin because we had a question, Eleanor, about once you open this, how long will it stay good for?
Oh, Coravin Schmorvin. This will last for months in your fridge as long as you keep the cork on and you keep it in the fridge.
That's what we thought. Well, the only problem is
high acid, high alcohol.
That's what we thought. The only problem was we have another ice cider in our fridge that's been in there for a couple of months, and so we were like, well, let's finish that one first before we fully open this one.
Yeah, that's what.
So we're using Coravin, and we'll throw up. We have all our Crafty Cask favorite home bar glasses and
nice glassware, guys.
Yeah, we like these.
Yeah,
I think technically they're
grappa glasses.
Grappa glasses, but
yeah, and this is a copita, which is a sherry.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Yeah. Sherry glass.
So Eleanor, tell us, or Garrett, or all of you guys, tell us about the process of making an ice cider.
Well, I should really have Albert tell you that because he made
it. Let's do it.
He probably has more experience than anybody in the United States in making ice cider, which is not saying much.
So we started by talking to people about what could be a good mix, a good assemblage of apples, and then we just gave it a try. We pressed the juice in December, January, and we let the juice freeze outside. And that concentrates the sugars, basically.
And the acids and the flavors.
And the acid and the flavors, yeah. So once the juice is completely frozen, you bring it back inside and you let it melt a little bit. And the first thing that melts out is a very sugary liquid at about 36–37% sugar. So the apple juice at about 10% sugar becomes this incredible concentrate at 36–37% sugar. So it's not fermented yet. It's just a way to concentrate the juice.
So wait, I have a question. When you pick the apples, are the apples frozen?
No. We pick them at the peak of their ripeness.
Okay.
Then we keep them in cold storage to keep them nice and fresh.
Because that's a little different than ice wine, right? Ice wine, typically the grapes are
and some cider makers.
Yeah, so we actually, Garrett, the past couple of years, and this past year, 2018-19, a little more, has made a cryo-extracted cider. So that's from apples that are frozen on the tree.
Okay.
Apples are not grapes, right? So most of them fall off the tree when they're ripe. They don't hang on.
That makes sense.
There are only a few that do. Golden Russet, Cortland are the two primary ones. And it's a much woodier, starchier fruit. You have cellulose structure in the flesh of the apple. The tannins are in the flesh, which is not the way a grape works, right? Grapes it's just the skins, and you've got much more water content and no cellulose in the interior. And when you freeze an apple, there is a breakdown of the cellulose structure that causes things to happen that don't really happen the same way in a grape. It doesn't taste, you could, if you want to order our Comme de Glace, which is awesome, it doesn't taste as much like apple. And so because we're working with all these amazing heirloom varieties of apples and all these incredible flavors, we really wanted you to experience, and when you taste this heirloom blend, you get this, like the soul of the apple in the flavor. And that's really because we're freezing the juice, fresh pressed juice outside, as opposed to freezing the apple.
So it makes for a very clean product. So after we get that concentrated juice, then we have to warm it up. It's usually at -7, -8 Celsius. So we warm it up, and we add some yeast, and then it ferments slowly. We keep it really cool as we can, so that it doesn't ferment very fast. And then we track down the specific gravity So the sugar changes to alcohol that reduces the specific gravity. And we correlate that to a percent alcohol. And for us, we stop the fermentation at about 10%, 11% alcohol, and 15% residual sugar or so.
Okay.
So a lot of tasting, it's very good. A lot of tasting on a daily basis. And then you have to stop the fermentation. So then we crash cold the tank, the fermentation. So it stops the fermentation. And that takes a little while at very cold temperatures. And the fermentation stops. And then we filter and bottle.
Well, then we wait.
Yeah, we wait.
Yeah. So the ice cider that you're tasting now is from the 2015 harvest.
Wow.
Do you during the time that you're waiting, is it sitting just in tanks, or are you barrel aging anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the second ice cider we ever made was a single variety Northern Spy that we aged in used French oak Chardonnay barrels, actually from Napa. And unfortunately, we're out of that right now. But over the years, there was, you'd get stuff and you'd fill up a tank and there'd be some left over. So we'd stick it in a barrel, we stick it in a corner. And over the past few years, we've been releasing ice ciders that have been aged in a single barrel for 6 to 7 years.
Wow.
And those are pretty amazing. So Queen Mab is the current version of that. It's 100% Ashmead's kernel from 2012.
Which was not really
you have right there? Oh, you're just opening that. Okay.
Ah. Amy, are you saying something?
I think she was.
I was. I forgot I was muted, but no, I said I wish I had the Queen Fab. I got to try it a few months back before coronavirus at CiderCon, and it was mind-blowingly amazing. But I mean, this is just so good, especially with the delicious earthy cheeses we're eating right now. It's just such a treat, and
Stop telling us about your cheeses and making us jealous.
It's Derek's birthday tomorrow. Where Heather and Derek are on here somewhere, and
happy birthday,
we're gonna finish this with them tomorrow if I don't drink it all tonight.
Happy birthday, Derek.
So tell us why, because ice ciders, and ice wines too often have a reputation for being like sickly sweet, and like too sweet. And yours is so nicely well balanced. Like it honestly to me is almost like a caramel apple where it's like salty and kind of like smoky, but also a little sweet. And so what makes that difference between those ice ciders that we find out there that are so sweet and cloying versus a well-balanced one like this?
So it really starts, as everything does for us, with the apple varieties and the balance between sugar and acid in those apples. Because it's really the acidity that balances the sweetness.
Yeah, it's really, and so this is kind of what's going on here in this picture. That's like, is that
no? Those are just empty apple bins.
Empty apple bins. Okay.
Now, maybe not with this one so much, but the tannins I feel like also help to balance the sweetness and the acidity as well. And I think that's one of the things that I found kind of compelling and interesting about cider as I came from the wine world, was that for the most part, cider apples have far less sugar than maybe your garden variety grocery store apple, but they all have roughly the same amount of sugar. And so the variances that you see in these ciders made from heirloom traditional cider apples is really mostly about the influence of that perception on your palate due to the counteracting effects of the tannins and the sugar that's left over.
Yeah. So there's not a whole lot of tannin in our ice ciders. You don't really want bitter in your dessert drink. Mm-hmm. So we're looking for apple varieties that have some soft tannins to them, more about astringency and structure than about, bitter and flannel.
Sure.
And so the heirloom varieties here are really a lot of old New England varieties, like Roxbury Russet is a key component. Things that have great acid, like Spitzenberg, Cave Blanc, which is a great French baking variety. And, you know, something like Black Oxford out of Maine has some of that soft tannin component to it. It's not a particularly interesting juice in and of itself, but it brings that like little soft tannin astringency to it. So it's really, there are sort of 15 core varieties that go into this, but every time we make it, there's probably another 10 to 20 of little bits and pieces that get thrown in. But it's acidity against the sweetness, and then sort of that soft tannin for structure.
Yeah, it's really delightful.
Yeah, it's really lovely.
A question came through here that hopefully, I don't know how much experimenting you've done with this, but you know, obviously with sugars as high as they are when you put the juice in there to begin fermentation, what's the lowest temperature that you've seen be able to ferment something like this? I know it would take ages the lower the temperature gets, but.
Well, I have two parts to that response. One is you want a healthy fermentation, so you don't want things to get too stressed out either by going too fast or too slow. And so ideally it's around 12 degrees Celsius, which is sort of 50, between 55 and 60 Fahrenheit.
Right.
The other thing is you don't want it to be able to ferment really cold, because you want to use a yeast that's going to cold crash.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, of course.
That makes sense.
Otherwise, you won't be able to stop.
There are a couple of really key things, like do not use champagne yeast on ice cider because you cannot kill it.
Right.
You will not be able to stop your fermentation. And don't fall prey to somebody who says, "Oh, this is a great yeast to use for ice cider because it can ferment at really low temperatures," because you won't be able to kill that one either.
Sure. Oh, it's good insight. Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What else?
We have one other question. Oh, we don't. You just asked that question. Anne Marie and David are out of their last one. That's so sad. But luckily, we have some nice discounts and some nice promos going on, and I just throw those in the code, or in the chat. So, yeah, if you're feeling a little envious of all these delicious things that we're drinking tonight, and you don't have them there with you, by all means, please go online. We'll send an email out as well after this. But we put some of the links in the chat. There's some great discounts going on, shipping promotions going on, so you can stock up and make sure for the rest of this shelter in place, which hopefully is not going to last too much longer, that you have plenty of cider to keep you warm and cozy and comfortable. And yeah, and some people were asking about our glassware. I just threw up we have a little Amazon list. That's our home bar must-haves.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so that's also a really fun way to support us, because if it's something you want to buy anyways, we get a tiny little kickback from Amazon. And so, yeah, so we have a bunch of our favorite barware and our favorite stuff that we have at home to make our cocktails and make our cider taste delicious.
Yeah, if you need a Coravin.
That would be one of our best kickbacks. Those babies are expensive. So, yeah, but especially if you plan on doing lots more tastings with us, we often are like, let's open 4 bottles. And
Right.
that's, you don't necessarily want to drink 4 bottles on a Thursday night. So,
But we're doing it.
yeah, so we want to be conscious of time. We are at the 90-minute mark. As we always say, we're happy to stay on a little longer and keep chit-chatting. And if people want to unmute themselves and kind of, they're
Open this up to kind of a more casual conversation. We're happy to hang out.
which you could have done the whole time. I hope you felt like you could. So I hope you didn't stay on mute because you felt like you couldn't talk. But sometimes, people don't want to, and they're just having fun listening, and that's great too. So yeah, so thank you so much, Eleanor and the Eden team, Garrett,
Amy,
Ben,
Lyndon.
everyone, Amy,
That was
Lyndon,
awesome. Yeah.
Heather, all of you who are here from the Botanist and Barrel team as well. We are so grateful to have you here. We hope that lots of people are excited to try your products and buy them and all that good stuff. And now you have lots of loyal new fans from this. And if you had a good time tonight, you can tip us as well. But honestly, more valuable for us would be to tell your friends and
Yeah.
bring your friends and share on social media and tell them that these virtual tastings
Come
are
back
fun.
next week and the week after that.
Yeah, like we have different makers every week. We have different themes, so it's not always cider. It's all the different craft alcohol.
Wine, spirits, beer, maybe
So-
sake one day or
Yeah,
mead
for
or
sure.
who knows.
So
You guys
yeah,
were great. This was so awesome. I'm so impressed and
Yay.
really
Thank
an
you,
honor
Eleanor.
to be part of it. Thank you so much.
good. Well, we would love to have you again anytime in the future, especially when you guys are experimenting and doing some fun stuff and trying out your, what did you say, 37th, 38th type of cider or whatever. Like we're happy to support. This is what we do.
Awesome.
Why don't we do one last little cheers, and anybody that
Wants
needs
to
to get
stick
off,
around?
wants to get off,
Yeah.
can, and we'll hang out whoever does.
Cheers, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Cheers.